Louis Vuitton is the #1 luxury brand in the world, valued at over $30 billion. Its history dates back to the 19th century and begins with a homeless teenager who could only dream of success. With no money or food, he worked odd jobs with artisans and craftsmen to survive, barely making any money but learned valuable skills that led to pioneering modern luggage and creating a billion-dollar empire. Before starting the video, be sure to smash that like button and subscribe to never miss out on any of our videos. Louis Vuitton's history dates back to 1821 with a 13-year-old boy who only dreamed of success. The boy had no money and food. He barely made money to survive through since he had to work off jobs with artisans and craftsmen to survive. He learned valuable skills that made modern luggage and creating a billionaire legacy. He was born by a farmer and hat maker at the time of the Napoleonic War, and many farmers, including the Vuittons, faced bankruptcy. At a young age, he had no choice but to work on family farms. He planted and harvested crops, raised animals, and stockpiled firewood. When Louis turned 10, life became even more difficult as his mother passed away, and soon after his dad Xavier Vuitton got married, Louis's stepmom, as wicked as villains in fairy tales, made Louis's life miserable, and eventually he had enough. After Louis turned 13 in 1835, he quietly ran away from their home in anarchy and headed to Paris with no money or food. The first railway line in France had just opened, and travel became more accessible and industries began to boom. Craftsmen started making boxes for travelers who needed to put their arts and many things that could withstand long trips. They also needed the service of packaging to prevent the breaking of their arts. Since Louis had the skill he learned, he decided to try and work on the train. Fortunately, Monsieur Markel hired Louis Vuitton as an apprentice. He never earns more, but his willingness to work paid off later. He became the most favorite among Markel's workers. Later on, the Empress of France appointed him as her personal bags maker. After 4 years, his bags were in high demand and he opened his first shop. Early on, Louis Vuitton came up with ideas for new products that changed the industry standard. Traditional bags were made of leather and rectangular shape. This made the boxes impossible to stack and time-consuming to load. Andrew Cudless is the first American furniture designer for French luxury brand Louis Vuitton. Cudless designed shelves for Louis Vuitton's Objets Nomades, a limited edition travel-inspired collection of furniture and home accessories. "I'm not the most fashionable person," says architect Andrew Cudless, the first American selected to design for Louis Vuitton's Objets Nomades, a limited edition travel-inspired collection of furniture and home accessories. "But I'm always inspired by fashion," he says. Luxury brands tend to be leading the cutting edge of experimentation with new materials, new techniques, and new tools that eventually work their way into the general design world. So working with Louis Vuitton was incredible, with their 166 years of history of exquisite craftsmanship. Using canvas materials, Louis created a slat trunk, and his new product marked the birth of modern luggage. After 2 years of customers being skeptical, it became a necessity. Afterward, he set out for a new invention: handbags. At the time, handbags were not impressed by society because many people complained that they were bulky and would cause injuries to women. Still, Louis believed that they had potential and decided to make them with canvas. He made them suit different outfits, and eventually Louis could not keep up and demand help from his son George. He created the tumble lock that turned trunks into a treasure chest and prevented theft. The family products became more desirable, but soon after production came to halt, war erupted and destroyed the business, making Louis Vuitton homeless for the second time. The Franco-Prussian War caused the fall of Louis. He and his family were forced to leave their home and workshop in Asnières for the city. There they lived in a cramped shelter among refugees. Food became scarce that the Vuitton nearly starved to death. When the war ended, Louis Vuitton returned home and was devastated to find his materials stolen and the workshop destroyed. Using the remainder of the savings, Louis wasted no time in rebuilding his workshop and finding a new shop location. Months of reopening businesses were thriving again, and orders came in from all over the world. Louis now tried to embolden himself with new ideas. At the time, technology was advanced enough to print custom patterns on fabrics. Since canvases are fabrics, Louis Vuitton was able to create a line of trunks covered in a striped pattern. It updated and showed people how up-to-date they were. It also made it more difficult for counterfeiters to copy his work. Afterward, Louis received many international orders that he opened a shop in London. His clientele was diversified, which included royals and explorers. Cudless connected with Louis Vuitton in 2016 at Design Miami. "I've never had a client as difficult in a good way like Louis Vuitton," Cudless says. "I would propose something and they would say, 'Oh no, that's not Louis Vuitton.' So I would have to swallow my pride a bit. It was a negotiation between the direction of their brand and my aesthetic. So we went through many rounds. I presented about 10 different designs. There were rugs and light fixtures and chairs and stools over a few months before we settled on the hanging shelf. And then we did a freestanding version. Although he was initially concerned about whether leather straps could support the weight of wood long-term and suggested embedding carbon fiber between the strips of leather, the Louis Vuitton team reassured him. "It's probably a trade secret," Cutlass said. But they said, "Don't worry, we already know how to do that. We have a standard way of making sure that straps on handbags are very strong and won't rip." Louis suddenly passed away in his home at the age of 72. Till today, the cause of his death is unknown. It was now up to George Vuitton to take on his father's unfinished plans. George wasted no time raising the business and traveled to the US to attend the World Fair. Experience taught him that he needed an international sales network. Fortunately, he met John Wanamaker, the postmaster who could help. He pioneers the idea of a departmental store and invented the price tag. After meeting George, he started selling LV in his New York departmental store. He became the first in the US to carry the brand. It was then that George created a monogram in memory of his father, a floral pattern with an interlocking L and V. Customers were shocked to see the monogram on products. Time changed and the new design took off. From then, George and his son Gaston continued to follow Louis Vuitton's footsteps and creating new designs. They started creating noteworthy creations, even a bag to carry wine and champagne, key ball, and redesign. A redesign of the Coco Chanel Commission, Alma. By then, George had trashed across every state in the US. Like his father, he was bound to bring the business to new heights, but unfortunately, history repeated itself. He passed away, leaving Gaston to continue with Louis's unfinished plans alone. Gaston was off to an unlucky start. The Second World War erupted and contracts were cancelled. Gaston has no choice but to shut down LV factory and stores. In LV, A French Saga, the author claimed that Gaston became so desperate to survive and collaborated with the ruling party for Germany because he gave a green light to produce commemoratives, busts, and set up a shop in Vichy, France. The author claimed others were shot down, but LV was the only shop allowed to open. After the war ended in 1946, Gaston tasked his sons Henri, Jacques, and Claude Vuitton with rebuilding the company. With their father's guide, they rebranded new models of luggage each year. But after Gaston's passing, business stagnated. Hard-sided luggage became less popular. They divided themselves about how to run the company. They asked their sister's husband, Henry Racamier, to take over. By then, Henry founded and sold a steel trading company for a large profit. He had a keen business view and turned LV from wholesale to retail and tapped to the Asian market, mainly Japan. Still, Henry went ahead with opening stores all over the world. Within just a few years, he proved the analysts were wrong. This was in 1987. LV reached almost $1 billion in sales and merged with Moët Hennessy, a champagne and cognac producer, to produce a luxury goods conglomerate, LVMH, to prevent outside takeover.